Hey, BassGeek here, and today I'm going to show you how I break down maps to find those offshore bass. So it all starts here from the comfort of my couch. Pre-trip planning is super important to the success of your trip and finding these fish out deep. Now, because you put all the work in pre-trip planning, don't mean that you're going to go out there and automatically find these fish. We're still going to have to put the time and the work in on the water. But this is where it starts. You want to optimize your routes, optimize your trip so you can cover as much water as possible, as much area of the lake as possible when you go out. And that all starts really for me with two separate tools. It starts with Navionics and it starts with Google Earth. So with Navionics, basically what I'm looking for there is the lay of the land. So the structure, you know, the humps, the creek channels, the points that I'm going to be targeting, and the depth that those features are in. Now, secondly, I'm going to use Google Earth to find inconsistencies in the mappings, because the maps aren't always showing you the full picture and aren't always exactly right, and the detail isn't always correct. So in my lakes, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll lower the lakes 20, 30 feet during the wintertime. So I can go back and find some older, or maybe the newest version was taken during the wintertime of the satellite imagery, and I can actually see what's under the water. From there, I'm going to look for other things like, you know, maybe old house foundations, grass, lay down, stumps, brush piles, that as that water is down I can see, and I'll also be able to find any inconsistencies in the map itself. Let's say if Navionics is telling me that a point comes out so far and turns to the left, you know, there may be a secondary hump on that point or a knob on that point that, you know, Navionics for some reason doesn't have on there. So what I'm going to start with, I'm going to start with a lake that I've actually never been to, and I'm going to show you some of the things and kind of how I would break this down and how I would run this lake on the first day that I got there. And the lake that I'm actually going to break down for you is the Barren River. Now this is where my next BFL tournament is. So I've never actually been here. And so I can kind of show you the process that I go through if I was actually going down here to look for offshore fish. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that I'm always going to be looking for with offshore fish, when I get there first thing in the morning, I want that water temperature to be 78. That seems to be the temperature that starts to push these bass out deep. You know, we don't want it to climb to 78 throughout the day. We want it to be at or above 78 degrees when we get to the water, really at first light. Now, before we really get started, I want to talk to you a little bit about map study. Map study, I know most of you all out there are going to be able to read a map, but let's go over the simple basics of it. So right here is a point. And what I want to show you is, you'll notice that the lines are far apart over here. That's a big flat area on the bottom of the lake. But as we get closer to the point, they start to get closer together. Now this is the old Barren River river channel, or the riverbed. And so just like if you were to walk up to a dry creek bed, you would notice a drop off. You know, this is what keeps the water in its banks. This is the banks of the old river. So you'll get a quick drop off right there, and you can tell that's a drop because up here you've got a 59 and it drops down to about a 70, 71 foot bottom. Then as we start coming up, we've got 68, 66, 64, all the way up to 46, 14, and these will be 1 foot contours, so they'll be pretty shallow. And you can also tell this by the dam. Here's the dam. You can see at the top of the dam, the lines are spread out a little bit. They're a little more of a slope, and then as you get deeper, it kind of drops off quickly. And you can even notice over here how tight the lines are together. The lines actually show a very, very steep bluff style wall is what you're looking at there. So any questions about maps, guys, leave them in the comment section. I'm more than happy to help you out, and we'll talk more about this. You'll see a little more as we go on. Once we're on the water, guys, we want to be as efficient as we can be, and that means really planning out our route. We want to pick some areas and go from one to the next, to the next, to the next, and make sure that they're in sequence. And, that's pretty easy to do. You don't want to sit here and be going down the lake and go, oh, that looks good over there. Well, let's go over here and look at this, and then pull up on something, and it be a waste of time. I mean, every point or hump or ledge you pull up on is not going to hold a mega school or even a school of bass. So, you want to be able to cover as much water as possible. Remember, that first day on the water, when we're looking for deep fish, when we've made that commitment that that's what we're going to do, we're not pulling, a bunch of rods out, and we're not going to spend a lot of time. Even if we find a big school of fish, we're not going to spend a lot of time fishing for them. So we're going to be putting in at this boat ramp right here down by the dam during the tournament. So let's just start right here. And, this point is a really good example of a lot of things I like to look for when it comes to, deep water structure and fishing points that might hold bass kind of in those deeper areas. And the very first thing we notice is we've got the creek channel, and you've heard this from 100 different people. The creek channels are the highways that the fish use to migrate. Now, sometimes they're going to be marked and they're going to be real clear, but other times they're not. As this little cove right here, you can tell. But one of the ways you can tell if there's a creek channel there is if you'll just look at these lines and how they kind of arch up to one direction or down, as the case may be, in this direction. And what that means is there's probably a creek channel that runs right up through here from about the 60. It comes right up through here, and it actually bumps up against this point, and this point actually is another great spot. So you got a nice little deep hole. You got a little point that comes out here by this 38 where the creek channel bends in, makes it real steep. This is going to be some area that we really want to pay close attention to. And then we've got another little secondary point on this main point. And that's going to be an area we want to pay attention to where that creek channel comes in. Even though it's not marked, you can see exactly where it is. Now, a great spot on this, you've got a flat spot. See how the lines really separate apart? Well, that's a little flat spot, and you can't really tell. That might even be a little dip up on top of that, which is even better. It's incredible, because what will happen is these bass will hang off to this deep side, or this is actually steeper. They can hang off right here, and they'll actually pull up on this flat and feed. Now, the other thing is, of course, during the tournament, not going to be able to fish this. It's probably going to be off limits, but when you're coming out and you're fishing for fun, or maybe on this lake you're fishing from another area, one of the things you got to think about is there's a ton of fish that's going to be every weekend brought to this ramp and released at this ramp, and the first spots that they're going to stop will be here as they scatter back out throughout the lake, here or here. And if it's hot and they're tired, they're going to run right back out to these spots, and they're going to sit there before they, go on to the rest of the lake. So since I can't fish those, we're not going to actually stop there. But a spot that we are going to look at, as we can see, we've got a little creek channel that runs here. We've got a nice point. We've got something that is obstructing the middle of this. And I'm going to guess generally when you see this, it's going to be some sort of road bed. Now this is where Google Earth comes into play. Now here's a great shot that we can actually see. Here's that flat area. And you can see somebody's put out some, man-made structure there. And we can see all down through here, we've got all kinds of man-made structure. We can see the riprap of the dam. And then we'll run over and we'll look at the other side here. And there's one point. And we can see on this point as it gets out deeper, we can see we've got a rock transition. So from big slab to chunk to pea gravel, that's a great spot right there. That point comes way out there. And here we go. Here's our pinch point. And this right here looks like where an old bridge used to be. So we've got, a long point coming out of each side, and we've got a creek channel that comes down to a pinch point. And considering that the water is going to be up right there, guys, it's going to be a great spot to take a look at. Now let's jump back over to our map. So we're going to zoom out here, and one of the things that I want you to notice is this is the old river channel. And one of the things that I find key in reservoirs is to make sure you have either the river channel or a creek channel near that deep structure. It is very important. I'm not saying there's not exceptions to the rules, but when you're really trying to dissect a lake and find those deep areas, especially when you're trying to learn this and how to do this and what the fish are sitting on, pay very close attention to your creek and river channels. This lake actually sets up a lot like the lakes at home. Now, I don't get to fish the Tennessee River a whole lot, and natural lakes, there's no natural bodies of water. It's all reservoirs where I live. The Tennessee River, I'll actually show you at the end of this some things. We'll pick a natural body of water, and we'll pick some spots on the Tennessee River. I'll kind of show you what you would be looking for, some things that are a little different that may not exist on these lakes. On these type of lakes, what you're really looking for 90% of the time, long points, and you're looking for, humps and points 90% of the time. You're not going to really be doing true what I call ledge fishing most of the time. But the creek channels are still important. And so, like I said, the first spot we would stop and check would be right here. But the second spot we're going to stop and we're going to look at is going to be here. And you can see this point, it actually has a little point that goes out to the left. The point here, probably not going to bother with because it's really not a point at all. But you got a point that comes out, but at the top of it, it kind of bears to the right. And you'll notice I've got this marked in blue. And you can actually change that if you go under menu, you go under map settings. You can actually change that to as deep as you want. A good starting point is 25 feet though. That's generally where I start. But you can see it gets a little wider right here, so it almost flattens out, and then the point comes on out a little deeper. So, we really want to make sure we check this little side point, and then this flat area, and out here, and then off the deep side of that point. So we'll check there. We'll notice that our creek channel comes in. Our creek channel or our river channel is a little ways away from this point, but we'll check that anyway. It's close enough for us to care about it. But right across the lake from that is a really interesting spot. And what this is where the river channel comes up, and this is actually a bluff right here. And you've got a long point that's coming out, and you can even see there's a flat spot on top of it. You got a nice little hump or a saddle. Got a nice flat spot out here deep, and then you've got this point. So this is definitely an area we're going to cover thoroughly. We're going to spend some time on this area, really graphing it, really, going back and forth, checking that out. You got the river channel that really comes up. You got deep water. We'll come down. Really nothing down here, to speak of. This section right here might be a little interesting. Something that you can pay attention to when you get a long straightaway, which we can see this kind of meanders around. But when you get a long straightaway, let's say this area, and it runs into a creek channel or a bend like this, when that current comes in and hits right in here, if the creek channel is set up right, a lot of times you can find some fish setting up right there. I'll show you that again a little bit later. But again, this point right here, maybe I may go, just take some wide coverage areas to see what that point actually looks like. That little hump there. We come back up. We've got a nice little point here. It comes in, it forks apart, and we got a couple of points right here. You can see, guys, where the creek channels run. Now I'm probably going to stick to the main body of water, the main lake. I will check again. This is one of those areas that the creek channel is over here, but I will come over and kind of hit the high points. This is really wide, a really wide flat, but you got a nice steep drop right here with a hole and a little point coming out. I may check that. Then you got a couple of spots here, maybe some points there. And again, we can go back to Google Earth. We can kind of look at this. Here you can see just sort of the highlighted area. It's still underwater. And when you get to this lake, that may honestly be too deep. Now these points again look pretty promising the way they come out. The longer out away from the bank the points are, the better. You got a nice rock transition there. Generally, the longer those points are, the more fish they're going to hold out there deep. Now here's that spot we were talking about earlier, how it comes in. You got a steep drop right here. So we may check that out. Now here's a couple of really great spots right here. Look at how long that point is. It probably comes on out here. Here's just another point. Let's see if the creek channel runs up anywhere near these spots. And so as we zoom in, we see there's a nice, here's that long point. Got a creek channel that runs down, runs right off the tip of that point. Got a creek channel that runs here, right off the tip of that point. That's why you can see the lines get really close together. Got two creek channels that intersect on this point. So if we go back to Google Earth, we're going to see, and like I said, there was a creek channel that intersects right here. You can see how this takes a turn. Same here, and something that you can't see, there's a hook right here on the end of this point. So there's some deep water that runs up. And something you really want to pay attention to, if you can see this, this is a drainage ditch. So during the wintertime when they drain this lake, all this water will come together and it'll drain off right there. And those bass sometimes will sit right in or around that ditch, just like it's a small creek channel. Again, another spot right there that we might want to check. So let's go back. A little wide there. That point is great. Got a nice little deep spot, creek channel coming up to it. But anyway, long story short, and here's a great spot again. You know, got a creek channel that runs up. Definitely going to check this out. Got a flat spot right out here on the tip. It doesn't drop off too much though. Now over here, great point. You got a hump that comes up here. It gets a little deeper on the outside. The creek, the main river channel runs right up against it. You've got the creek channel that runs around the outskirt of it. So really interesting area to go check out. And even this marina floating right over top of that river channel, very interesting place. And here we have another boat ramp. So, you know, these areas right here are going to be great spots where these fish are going to pull up, and maybe you can pick off some retreads. So to sum it up, guys, you know, that's kind of what I'm looking for when I go out. I'm going to create a path, a route. And I'm going to take this route. I'm going to go out to my sonar on my boat before I go. And I'm going to drop waypoints on each place I want to go look at. If I find fish on them, I'm going to add a waypoint to it where those fish are, get rid of the one that just says, hey, come look at me. And if I don't, I'm just going to get rid of that waypoint altogether so that I know that's a place that's probably not going to pay off for me. And, you know, you can cover a lot of water, and I'll show you exactly what I'm doing, shots of the graph, show you how I grid a point, a hump, how I actually go about making sure that I'm looking at my sonar and that I'm covering a place thoroughly, or I'm covering a place very quickly to move along to. So anyway, this lake right here definitely has some potential. We cover a lot of deep spots really quick. And if anybody knows the Barren River or fishes the Barren River on the regular, let me know if it even has an offshore bite. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know. Traditional ledge fishing, you know, it's a little different. Not so much about the points and the humps, you know, maybe the humps, but it's a little more about the actual ledges. And here's two great examples. What you really want, the current is flowing here from north to south. You can see right here, there's a creek channel that comes out. And, you know, this area right here is going to create a little bit of a current break. This is the type of area that you're going to want to look for. And you'll see over here, you've got a perfectly straight ledge, and then you've got two really nice indentions, a nice little point there. That's the sort of stuff that you're going to want to look for on these types of lakes, on the Tennessee River lakes. Really out on the ledges. You can see even right here, you've got a nice hump that comes up, you know, to about 10 feet. And, you know, it drops off pretty steep there. Again, another little drop, you're down to about 15. So that sort of stuff on the ledges is really what you're going to be looking for. These drains, you know, that can create these little creeks that run in, that can create current breaks. You know, those are the type of things you're going to want to look for out on, you know, the Tennessee River lakes. So I hope this helps you out. I really hope it helps you to understand that there's really no magic formula to this. It's really all about putting in seat time. Not going fishing, but going hunting. That's really the key to this process. You know, there's days, and I've been, you'll see the videos to come, but there's days when I've been looking at a new lake and I've spent 2-3 weeks. You know, maybe it's 1 day a week or 2 days a week over the past 3 weeks, but just going out graphing. Even when I find a school, I'll spend 5, 10, 15 casts on it. And that's really it. Guys, there's no substitution for seat time in front of those graphs. If you want to go catch fish immediately, this just simply ain't for you. I'm sorry. But if you want to go catch big fish and you really want to learn how to do this, keep your rods in your rod locker and go look at these long points. Go look at these creek channel swings, these ledges. You've got to spend time. Like I said, there's no magic formula to this. It's just putting the time in to find this stuff. Guys, I'll answer any questions you have though, as always. So questions and comments in the comment section below. You know I love to talk to you about fishing, and you really ought to know I love talking to you about this, because this is my favorite thing and favorite way in the world to fish. I tell people all the time, once you find these fish over the years, it's the most consistent bite during the summer. So you need to make sure you go out and you spend the time, because this isn't going to pay off for just today. It's going to pay off for years to come. And I'll show you that again this year. So like it if you like it. Don't forget to ring my bell for the notifications, and you guys rock.